Namaste and welcome. It's Rishi here from meditatewithrishi.com, and today we are going to be exploring Bhakti Yoga. In yesterday's video, which was an introductory video, we touched upon the four main parts of yoga, and I promised you that in the upcoming videos we will be looking at each one in depth so you can understand what are the different parts to self-realization and also get a good idea of what may be the path for you, essentially. So let's get into it. Today we'll be exploring Bhakti Yoga, the path of love. And in the video, we will be covering the definition. What is Bhakti Yoga? What are the practices one can and should do on this path? Who are some of the key figures in the history of Bhakti Yoga that have actually attained realization, attained the goal, and what experience did they have? We're going to be looking at what kind of relationship you can actually have with divinity. We are going to be looking at the advantages of this practice, and yes, also the disadvantages of this practice. So it may be a bit of a long video, but if you are interested, then it will definitely be worth your time, okay? So let's get into it. Again, we will try to define what is Bhakti Yoga. Put very simply, it is the path of love. It is the path of attaining God realization, of attaining self-realization through loving remembrance of the divine. Very simply, it is the path of trying to attain oneness with God, or a personal God of your choice, essentially. So I'm speaking today from the Indian tradition, right? In the Indian tradition, you know that we have so many different aspects of God. There are so many different gods, goddesses, you know, Hanuman, Krishna, Rama, so many types of goddesses, Ganesha, all these, right? And all of these essentially are symbols of that one supreme divinity. But they give us a lot of variety in terms of what we can choose as our personal God or our Ishta Devta. And this essentially helps us to form a relationship with God quite easily, because people have different temperaments. Some people view God as a father or a mother. You can even view God as your friend, like Arjuna did with Krishna. You can view God as your child, again, as so many people do with baby Krishna, and have attained realization through that. You can also view God as your beloved. You can also view God as the universe itself, nature itself, existence itself. The ways are so many, the paths are so many. There are no rules in bhakti. It is simply your own temperament, your own devotional sentiment that matters. And God will come to you in any form that you choose. If you truly believe that God exists, and if you truly believe that God has created this universe, just look around. There are so many different types of creatures, of plants, of animals, of types of food. So what big deal would it be to the Creator to actually come to you in any form that you choose? This path is for people that really believe that the supreme universal consciousness can manifest in the form of a personal God that they choose. So if you are watching this and thinking that, I don't believe that God exists in a specific form or can manifest in a specific form, then this may not be the path for you. It is not to say that it's a bad thing that you don't believe that. It just means that that is not your temperament. It is not the way that you're inclined. And there are many other parts of yoga that you can take up to actually attain realization. This may not be your path. But if you are somebody that has grown up in a way and really believes that there is God, he or she exists, he or she can manifest in a physical form, then this is definitely a good path for you. Okay, so this is the essence of what is bhakti, what are we trying to actually attain in bhakti. And the idea is very simple. You know from the previous videos, from the philosophies, that ultimately to realize our true nature as universal consciousness, to realize our true nature as divinity, the one thing that blocks us, no matter what path you are on, is the ego, essentially. So in this context, in bhakti, when you are putting all your energy in the form of love to a specific deity, where there is love, where there is supreme love, unconditional love, there can be no ego, essentially. And really the art of this, of true bhakti, is being able to see your form of God, not just as a separate entity, but actually within all beings, within all people, within all animals, within the whole of nature, within all the things that you use and operate in your day-to-day life. Everything is divinity. So if you are a devotee of Krishna, everything around you, living and non-living, is Krishna to you, and you must treat it as such. When we behave in this way, ultimately the ego diminishes, because Krishna, or everything that is divine, is greater than you, and you simply merge into that. Okay, so what does enlightenment look like on this path? Now, very simply, you know from the science of meditation that enlightenment, or self, or realization, right, samadhi, whatever you want to call it, is when we become totally merged into the object of our meditation. So on the path of bhakti, essentially, it is having a physical vision of God. God can manifest in an actual physical form for you and become a never-ending part of your life. You can actually become one with this divinity, have this divinity live through you, essentially. Your entire life will change through this. So let me give you a few examples of what I mean. Some key figures, I've actually written them down here so you can go and explore them in your own time, is a few key figures in the history of bhakti, right? One that you may have definitely heard of is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was a huge devotee of Lord Krishna. It is said that when he would sing and dance and chant the Lord's name, he would enter into Bhava Samadhi, and his very experience would permeate the entire environment and the people around him. People were just mesmerized, looking at him, singing and chanting the name of the Lord. He is in fact the person that inspired the Hare Krishna movement as you know it today, which has become an international movement. Any country you're in, there is a Hare Krishna center there, there are devotees there, and it is benefiting millions and millions of people through this path of bhakti. Another great figure in the history of bhakti is Mirabai. I would actually encourage you to go and read up on her life, how she had brought Krishna into every single part of her existence and the experiences that she had from that. Another amazing example is Sri Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna, who you may have heard of, he was the guru of Swami Vivekananda, and he was a great devotee of the goddess Kali. And when you see a photo of him, I'll try and put one here, he looks like the most simple, nicest human being that they could ever be. But his devotion for Kali was so much, right, that essentially he had the vision of her in the temple that he used to sit outside. And what he is known to say is that I'm illiterate, I don't know, I've not read any books, I don't know anything. All I know is I love the goddess. And the goddess has taught me everything that I need to know about Vedanta, everything that I need to know about the Vedas. All the knowledge that I have is simply from having vision of the goddess. So these are some magnificent examples on or in the history of bhakti. Now, you may be thinking that these people are, okay, I can read about them. They are no longer living, right? They've passed away. Is there anybody in the world today who has seen God? And there is one person whose work that I love reading called Om Swami. Om Swami is a figure very majestic, very relatable to us today, because he was somebody until 32 years old. He was living, I believe, in Australia, and he was running an IT company. And spirituality was a part of his life for a very long time, but he decided that he wants to renounce the world, and he went straight to the Himalayas and began to do his spiritual practice, or rather further his spiritual practice. And the long and short of it, which you can read in his book, A Monk's Memoir, is that he sat down and he said that, Goddess, I love you so much, I want to see you. Either I will have a vision of you or I will perish. And he sat there in meditation, and he describes in the book the amazing experience where he did have a vision of the goddess. And in further works, I've read that actually his disciples that he has taken on have actually also been able to have these visions. So I'm not asking you in this video to believe that any of this is possible. I personally 100% believe it is possible because of the research that I've done, how much I love this topic essentially. This is not about believing or not believing. If you believe, then this is a path for you. If you do not believe, then no problem. There are so many other paths that you can take ultimately. But if you are somebody that does believe, you do love the aspect of having a personal God, then this is to encourage you and tell you that no matter who you are, where you are, what you are, it is possible in this lifetime to actually reach the goal, to actually have the vision, to actually have the blessings of divinity in your life forever. Okay? So, bhakti is something that, unlike the other parts of yoga, it is something that can do wonders in your life because you are getting the grace of God directly. There's a story of one of my teachers in India who is a physician, and he was at a point in his life a few years ago where he had a disease that was just not going. And being a doctor himself, he tried many things and was unable to actually get rid of the disease. And finally he listened to what his mum was saying, that go and meet this Pandit and speak to him and see what he says. And the Pandit asked him to basically recite the Hanuman Chalisa, a few times every single day. I don't remember the exact number. And in doing that, in some time, essentially, his disease was completely gone. It was history, right? So this is a path of belief, essentially. If you believe it is possible, if you believe anything is possible, this is a path of blessings, of grace, of miracles, essentially, okay? So, all right, what are some of the practices we can do on this path of bhakti? So practices are very simple. The first aspect is starting to have a divine presence with you, starting to bring a divine presence in your home. So this is where you see a lot of people will have a temple or a shrine in their home. They will have either an idol or an image of God, of their personal aspect of God, right? And it creates a divine presence in the house, in the home. It means that already some things are being done differently now. Maybe in that place you don't, keep alcohol there or keep meat there. There's this at the back of your mind, this feeling of a divine presence. Then what happens is you start to worship this image or this idol, and people start to actually treat that idol as a member of the family. So you begin to feed the idol, which means that before you eat, the first portion of the food is kept at the idol. That God, my father, my mother, my friend, you please have a taste of this first. there is this element of surrender. When you go to sleep at night, in many cases, you even put the idol to sleep with a nice little blanket or something. It is the sentiment, essentially. You are giving that idol the sense of, that it is living there with you. It is living in physical form. It's not just a piece of stone or a picture. It is living there. From there are aspects of worshipping the idol. So I want to explain this to you in a way that makes you understand why these things are done, right? So think about it. If I told you right now, switch off this video, sit down and meditate, what will happen? You will sit down, you may close your eyes, but the mind is running, the mind is running, the mind is running. So we cannot go from normal life straight into meditation. It is not possible. The mind needs to be tamed in stages. So the first stage is to actually use your senses in worship of the Lord. This is where you are doing bhajan, singing, kirtan, essentially, right? The chanting of mantras loudly, where in your normal life you're already talking. Now that talking, instead of normal talking, has become, talking about the Lord or singing to the Lord, or basically doing mantra chanting of the Lord, right? Then from here, when the mind is now in that direction, right? You've put the mind in that direction. Then from there, the practices can start to become more subtle. From loud chanting, loud singing, you may go to do the japa or the chanting of the mantra. You can do the chanting of the mantra mentally. You can do the chanting, if mentally is difficult, you can do it loud first, you can whisper it, and then you can go mentally. Then as your mind is calmer and calmer, going further inward, you can actually try to meditate on the form. You can visualize the deity in your mind. You can place the deity visually in your heart and meditate on that form, essentially. There is so many things you can do depending on how you're feeling, but these should become daily practices, essentially. So you may say that, every day in a specific place, at a specific time, and I will do a specific practice. So this becomes a discipline then on the path of bhakti. It becomes a discipline where every day you say, at this time, in this place, I will chant these many mantras on my mala, or I will meditate, imagining the form of the Lord or the goddess for this much time. And once you form a habit, that then will expand and expand and expand until you reach the goal, essentially. So these are some key practices that you can do on the path of bhakti. Now, to end the video, I want to speak about the advantages of this and the disadvantages of the path of bhakti, okay? So the advantages are very simple. This is one of the easiest paths there is, because most of us have grown up in some kind of religion where there is an aspect of God. If you actually notice closely, religions like Islam, religions like Christianity, that essentially is the same path of bhakti. It is actually the same path, right? You are doing, the practices are the same. You go to a church on a Sunday, there is singing, right? There is singing, chanting, and then there is also meditation that happens. In Christianity, you have the use of the rosary, what we call a japamala. In Islam, you have the use of that. In Islam, again, you have songs, praising the divine. So the practices are very simple. This is actually one of the most famous paths in the entire world, regardless of your religion, right? So the advantage is that it is easy because you have a big support here. You have a big support, and the support is the name and the form of God. You are not trying to meditate on emptiness. You're not trying to meditate on this invisible Brahman or this invisible consciousness. You're not trying to do any of that. You actually have something tangible that you can look at and call. So it makes it very easy. Do you understand? That is the biggest advantage. It makes it very, very easy because you have supports on this path. Now, there's a couple of disadvantages. They're not actually disadvantages because, of course, they can't be disadvantages. What I'm speaking about here is kind of if you get the wrong idea on this path. So one thing that can happen, you see this often, is people can become a bit fanatical about their religion. And what I mean by fanatical is this idea that my version of God is the only and true one, and what you are praying to is not true. It is some different entity, or it is not true, essentially. So this is incorrect, okay? Because if you truly understand what is said in these scriptures, you will understand the concept of oneness, that everything is one. There is only one reality. There is only one supreme consciousness. There is only one divinity. There is only one God. Now, we as humans, because of growing up in different parts of the globe, mystics have expressed the same truth in different ways. Yes, there can be different names. Even in the Indian culture, in one religion, there are so many different names that you can give. So just because the name is something different does not mean that the divinity is different. So it's really, really important to understand on the path of bhakti that the Krishna that you are praying to, or the Allah that you are praying to, is the same Ganesh that somebody else is praying to. It is the same Ram that somebody else is praying to. It is not different. The difference is for you. God has been so kind that He can come in any form that you choose. That difference is just for you. It is just a manifestation of the supreme consciousness. Okay? So that's a disadvantage, like not to become fanatic. It's really important to have that overall view. And it's also important not to get too stuck in the rituals. Remember the example I gave of meditation. The rituals essentially, right? The idol worship, the singing and chanting. The rituals that we do are simply a way to enhance the divinity in our life, so that the mind can be focused there, so that the mind can become calm and actually turn inward, and you can progress to meditation. Because it is through meditation, that you will have realization, essentially. So the inner spiritual practice is what we're trying to get to. Everything else is kind of a support on that path toward that end, essentially. So I hope this makes sense. I hope this covers a lot of the questions that you may have had about bhakti. And remember, this video, at the end of the day, it is my opinion. It is my understanding of bhakti. In bhakti, there are no rules, okay? The only rule is that you do whatever you do with pure love, and you live with completely pure love. So there are no rules. There is nobody who can come and tell you how to practice this path. It is a path of your own sentiment, the way that you want to express your love. As long as nobody is being harmed, and as long as unconditional love is actually the essence of what you're doing, then the choice is yours, essentially. Okay? So that is it. Thank you very much for listening. Namaste.